Robert Kiyosaki is a name we all know and are familiar with. He has a very unique perspective on why you should hold gold and why he's been holding gold for the last 3-4 decades. Robert, I'm such a big fan of yours. It's such an honor to finally be able to speak with you in person. Welcome back to Kitco.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate Kitco, and I want to congratulate you for being such a young guy. You know what you're talking about. It's like those characters on CNBS. They don't know anything, but it's nice, and you can hold your own with all the other gold and silver fanatics. So you're doing good, David. Doing great.
I appreciate your kind words, Robert. It's because of guests like yourself that we've had such a strong program. Robert, there's so much to go over with you today. Let's start off by talking about gold, and we'll move on from there. As you know, we've hit all-time highs not too long ago. We've seen a bit of a drop this week in gold prices. You're not someone who follows gold prices on a technical short-term basis. You hold gold because it's God's money. Tell us about that.
Well, let me give you a little bit of my background so you understand why I'm a psychopath on gold and silver. I love silver too. But as Warren Buffett once said, he says, you never ask an insurance agent if you need more insurance. And you should never ask a gold and silver bug if they should buy gold and silver, because the answer is always the same. So when people talk to me, they say, what should I do with my money? I said, buy gold and silver. I've been saying this for most of my life. And the reason for that is back in 1964, I started acquiring silver. And I started acquiring it when I noticed that copper tinge around dimes and quarters and half dollars. And that's Gresham's law, I believe. When bad money enters the system, good money goes into hiding. So I hid that money, except in 1964, I was still in high school, my mother spent it. And then I came across gold, and I wrote about it here in this book of fake money, fake teachers, fake assets. I flew for the US Marine Corps in Vietnam, my second tour. And Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard in 1971, as everybody knows, on August 15th. So about 6 months later, I got a letter by snail mail from my rich dad. I was flying off this carrier, and he says, hey, watch out, the world's going to change. Nixon took the dollar off of gold. And I had no idea what gold meant. What was that mean? And as you know, David, back in 72 or 3, it was illegal for Americans to own gold. So we had no idea what it was.
Yeah.
So Marine pilots versus Air Force and Navy pilots. Marines aren't the brightest guys on earth. We don't win any IQ awards. So we decided, my co-pilot and I decided we'd go look for gold. And we read the map of Vietnam and said, oh, look, a gold mine. So as I describe in this book, Fake here,
yeah.
We fly behind enemy lines. It was only, we fly looking for this gold. The one problem was the enemy had overrun it. NVA had taken it. So we fly into this little village to look for gold. We disarm ourselves. We walk up to this little bamboo shack, and we start haggling for gold. And back then, gold was just passing about $48 an ounce. And I thought because the Vietnamese woman and she had little red teeth because she chewed beetle nuts, because she was behind enemy lines, I could get a discount on gold. Mm-hmm. There was no discount. She said spot. She didn't speak any other word of English except spot. And I didn't know what spot meant. And so here I'm a college graduate. I don't know what spot means. I don't know what gold is. And I had to find out that the price of gold is the same all over the world back then. And so I had to wait until our carrier group sailed into Hong Kong. And while other guys were chasing dancing girls in Hong Kong, I went looking for gold in the streets of Hong Kong. I bought my first Krugerrand. And I still have that Krugerrand today. It's safely in storage outside of Switzerland. And that $50 Krugerrand is now worth about $2,000. And one more thing is that I've started a gold mine in China and a silver mine in South America, in Argentina. And I took both companies public on the Toronto Stock Exchange through IPO. Mm-hmm. The silver mine is still operating, is doing very well. But the gold mine, once we struck gold in China, the Chinese government took it. So I don't have much love, right now for the Chinese Communist Party. But that's how we live and learn. So am I a gold fanatic? Damn right I am. So if you ask me if you should buy gold, I don't care what the price is. What's his name? Harry Dent is calling for gold at $1,000. And I say, if it goes to 1,000, I'm going to buy more. And Schiff and Jim Rickards calling for gold at 15,000. It goes to 15,000. I'm going to buy more.
Yeah.
And you guys know the reason. The reason is the Treasury and the Fed are corrupt. They're printing more fake money than ever before. So I'm going to keep buying more gold and silver, which I've been doing since I was a kid. So don't ask me if you should buy gold and silver. We all know why we're buying gold and silver. The Fed and the Treasury are corrupt.
Robert, offline, I was telling you how my uncle was also a pilot like yourself. So I can relate to some of these stories that you told me. Now, you're also telling me about how you're getting ready to run from America. You're taking all your gold and silver belongings and you're getting out of there. What's going on, Robert?
Well, I'm a U.S. Marine. I had 7 uncles fight in World War II.
Yeah.
5 against the Nazis and the Italians, and 2 fought against the Japanese. My family was also locked in concentration camps in California. And so I had 7 uncles go and all this. So I fought for capitalism. America is going Marxist. And when I look at what's going on in Portland and Seattle and New York and Chicago and the cities, I mean, how in the world can we defund police and all this? How in the world can we keep printing money and doing what we do? So way back when, David, I started storing gold in Switzerland and in Singapore. So in case I had to run, plus I have different passports. So gold and silver are flight capital. And as you know, the only people making money today in America are moving vans as people move out of New York City, Chicago, Seattle, Portland, and San Francisco. We're becoming a Marxist country. And if Biden gets elected, we'll be going there faster. And the problem is most people don't know the difference between a Marxist and a capitalist.
Yeah, let's talk about that. You were telling me how, you asked the question to me earlier before we started rolling the tape here. Who killed more people, Marxists or capitalists? That's a powerful question, Robert. What do you mean by that?
Well, we've got to step back in time. I went to military school. I went to the same school that Mark Kelly went to, the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy. I was supposed to go to Naval Academy. I went to Merchant Marine Academy in New York. But the economics taught in military school are different than the economics taught in business school. Just as there's Mises economics and Keynesian economics and Malthus economics, military economics is different than civilian economics. So in military school, this is in the 60s, my economics teacher said, who kills more people? It was socialist or capitalist. And the answer is socialist. The Nazi Party was a National Socialist, whatever we call it. They killed 18 million people. 6 million were Jews. Stalin, the USSR, Union of Soviet Socialist Republic, killed 26 million people. Mao Zedong killed 46 million people. Pol Pot in Laos and Cambodia, they killed 15 million people. So the reason Americans go to war is to fight that. We fight for capitalism. But Americans think we're the killers. So the reason my uncles went to fight and an uncle fight in Korea is to fight against socialism. Because if you study the Communist Manifesto, it's really simple to see. Communist Manifesto, it was designed, what Marx said, was to take people from agrarian into totalitarian. But to get there, they needed capitalists to set up an industrial, take them from agrarian to industrial. So once the capitalists were in place and they set up an industry, Marxist doctrine said, and he's quote unquote, you killed them. So what's going on? What happened in China? Mao came to power, and Mao was, China was an agrarian society. So Eng comes in and he says, to be rich is glorious. He was the first capitalist guy. He was bringing in capitalism to China. And now you have Xi, who is emperor for life, totalitarian for life, and they're killing the people in Hong Kong who are capitalists. And as you and I were talking, because your family is from Taiwan, the odds are Taiwan is next.
Okay.
So that's why, as I say, as a former US Marine, I fought for capitalism. Unfortunately, America is going socialist, Marxist, and eventually totalitarian. So my money is out of this country. It's been out of this country for years. And I'm getting to run, just like the people are running out of New York City, Chicago, Portland, Seattle, and San Francisco.
But where would you go, Robert? I mean, people think America is the safest country in the world. Where would you go?
Well, you got to look in your crystal ball, you know. I kind of, well, you know, Switzerland's been that way for years, safe haven.
Yeah.
They have this runway that is the best. I've watched jets fly into Singapore. The jet opens its side, and I've seen tons of gold and silver moving into vaults in Singapore. So look, that's what the rich are doing. And that's why I have gold, silver, and now Bitcoin, simply because it's international currency. It operates outside the Fed and the Treasury.
We're gonna talk about geopolitics in just a bit here, but going back to what you said earlier about the U.S. becoming Marxist, how did this happen? How do we get here, Robert? How do we get from Reagan breaking the Soviet Union, bringing down the wall, to Marxism, which is what you said?
Well, it actually started, in my opinion, because you know I'm the baby boomer. When I came back from Vietnam, you know, there was a protest between hippies and everybody else. So when I come back, and I didn't have to fight, but I decided since my family fought, I'd fight. So I joined the Marine Corps and I go to Vietnam. When I came back, the hippies were outside, just like the protesters are today in Chicago and all that. I got hit with rotten eggs. I got hit with stink bombs. They got spit on and all this. And those were the hippies. Some of them were my classmates, SDS, Students for Democratic Society, Black Panthers, all of those guys. And what happened to the baby boom SDS members? They became school teachers. A lot of my peers are now teaching at the highest levels of academia and in government and running labor unions. So it was, it was almost exactly as people say, the Marxists knew, or the socialists knew, the way into the US was through the students. And you look at what's happening today, our schools are out and out teaching kids Marxism and socialism.
Robert, we spoke last time you were on Kitco. You had said that this was 3 months. This was back in March, the height of the coronavirus outbreak here, and this was just in the beginning phases of the lockdowns. And you had said that the lockdowns were engineering or manufacturing unemployment. You had called it criminal. These are some strong words. What would you have done differently if you were in the Senate?
I wouldn't say anything today because I don't know if you know this, but the Washington Post hung me out to dry as a racist.
Oh, wow.
I said, how can I be a racist? I'm not a white guy. They didn't like that comment either, you know what I mean? So the freedom of speech is gone. Freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, and also the freedom of religion. They shut down the churches. This is all Marxist. And then you look at the Sixth Amendment. The Sixth Amendment states you have the right to face your accuser. You know, so if I accuse you of being a racist, then I should come in front of you and say that. But today, due to social media, you can get accused of that just by invisible people, millions of them swarming around the place, you know, representing the uneducated. I don't know if they're uneducated, but they just have a point of view. So that's why I'm concerned, is we're going more and more Marxist. But it actually started in September 17th, 2019, when the repo market went crazy. You know, the repo market interest rates went from like 2% to 10%. But that was indication that the Fed and the Treasury are going bankrupt.
Right.
The repo market is what I call the pawn shop of the financial system. So what happened when the repo market went crazy in 2019, the Fed and the Treasury stepped in and took over the repo market. And then they started manipulating prices. So that was September 2019. December 2019, oh my God, COVID, Wuhan. Right. It's like so I criticized that. I said, there's something fishy going on. Well, as you know, if you criticize any of that stuff, vaccines and all that, the mob comes after you. Look at the doctors who said, COVID is BS. They get fired. They get taken off. If that's not Marxist, if that is not the First Amendment being destroyed, I don't know what is. Mm-hmm. And then to get accused by the Washington Post, which is Bezos' bunch, and I have no defense.
I'm just going to play devil's advocate here to what you just said. A lot of people would agree with you, by the way. But just to play devil's advocate here, this is the worst pandemic we've ever seen. If the government didn't lock us down and prevent us from going out and meeting other people, which could have potentially been escalated into a worse situation than what we've seen now, what else could they have done, Robert? Was this really, what other courses of action could the government have taken?
Well, the question is, who originated it? There's evidence today that it's manufactured. The question I have, is this biological warfare? That's my question. Being a military guy, a Marine, I'm not that bright, but I get suspicious. And then I interviewed David Stockman, who was Reagan's budget director, a couple of days on Rich Dad Radio. And I asked him, I said, what's the difference between Reagan and Trump? And Stockman's a very smart guy. He ran the budget for the Republicans. He says, the first thing Reagan would have done, because I don't know if you know this, but Reagan fired Petco. It was when the air traffic controllers went on strike, I don't know, back in whenever Reagan was the president. Reagan just fired all the air traffic controllers, shut down the whole country, says, we're not going to fly with you guys going on strike. So when I asked David Stockman, again on Rich Dad Radio, there's a plug there. It's the best interview I've ever heard by Stockman, because he's actually a comedian. And he says the first thing Reagan would have done was fire Fauci.
Okay.
And so David, when you see Trump, he stands there, Trump's a big man, but he's a friend of mine. And this little tiny dweeb sits there and Trump says nothing. And then what Stockman calls kerchief lady, Dr. Birx, he says, what power do they have over Trump? See, those are the questions that suspicious minds ask. When I look at that, I say, how does this Fauci have the power to basically destroy capitalism when the facts state that COVID does kill people, but it kills a certain group of people? It doesn't kill everybody. And so those are the questions, I've always had as a person who, not that I don't trust my country, I just don't trust them.
Well,
I don't trust the media.
Where is the incentive coming from? Who would manufacture something like this? Why would anyone want to do this at a time when globalization is such an important aspect of our well-being?
Well, because globalization is very, very left. Trump is national. What happened in America is when they started exporting, China came on board around 1972, 70, under Nixon. Our jobs left America. One of the reasons drug abuse is up so high is the American worker is losing their dignity. They're losing their jobs. And so rather than face reality, drug use goes up. But there's a correlation between prosperity going to China and other countries and jobs leaving country. You look at what happens, so guys like me, I make more money when jobs leave, truthfully, because my manufacturing is done in China and Taiwan and Korea. And so we just recently, this is before COVID, we started bringing our manufacturing back to the States because Trump is my friend. This is my book here within 2 Men, 1 Message,
Yeah.
And we've got to get back to protecting the worker and the jobs. Now that goes against the liberal point of view of let's all hold hands and sing Kumbaya. Well, that's good in theory. I agree with it in theory. Just like yesterday, they signed a peace agreement between the UAE and the Jews. That's important. But at what expense? You look at NAFTA, all that did was suck jobs out of America. And so what happens to the worker? That's my concern. And that's what Trump's concern is. So I'm not Republican or Democrat, but I am a capitalist.
Sure.
And I studied economics in military school, not business school. I did go to business school.
Robert, this is one of the questions that I get most asked by people that I know, investors who are concerned about the markets. Are we headed for war with China?
I would say so. I think we're already at war.